Welcome into Sports Memo's Betting Podcast, college football, every game on the board, segment number 2 with our second guest, Mid-Major Matt. Mid-Major Matt, welcome to the pod. How are you?
Doing well, Drew. Can't believe we've got our first playoff rankings and about 4 or 5 regular season games left for a lot of these teams in college football.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 through 4 is out. I believe 1 through 25. Not really sure how that works, but overall, we're going to get into the second section here, Matt, and starting off with UMass at Army. We got Army laying 34.5. Total is 61, I believe. You interested in getting involved here with Army versus the Minutemen?
Well, normally I'd have a bunch of information. I'd rattle off injuries, and I started looking for injuries in this game, and I'm like, wait a second. UMass is the worst team in the country. I mean, they've time and time again with what they've coming off giving up. They just gave up 400 yards in the first half to Buckshot Calvert. Like, that's just ridiculous. And he played 2.5 quarters in the last game. UMass, the last time they played against a triple option team was Georgia Southern last year, and Georgia Southern ran it better that last year than they did this year. Army is just dying for a blow-up spot. It's funny because I think their win total before the season began was 8.5 or 9. I mean, they're not going to get to that. They only have 3 wins so far this year. They are dying for one of these games so they can just stretch out and win by a lot. The question is, can they actually win by a lot? Because if you remember, back in September 21st, they played Morgan State, a team they're better than. Of course, it's an FCS team. They only won the game 52-21, so it's a lot of points. Maybe you go Army first half. You hope they get out to a fast lead, and then you don't have to worry about a backdoor in the second half.
Matt, good start there with UMass versus Army, and we'll stick to that kind of profile here with Connecticut at Cincinnati, and we got the Bearcats laying 7 touchdowns here, minus 35 at Hibbert, 54.5 the total.
Yeah, I don't know what you're trying to tell me here, Drew, because you gave me UMass and UConn these first 2 games. I don't know what's going on here. But, I mean, UConn's terrible. Coming off the 56-10 loss to Navy, I watched some of that game. Their quarterback, I know he's a Canadian. That's the one thing they kept harping on all game long. Oh, he's Canadian. That's great. But, like, their offense is terrible. Their defense doesn't stop anybody. Cincinnati, for this one, it's essentially one of those like layup games. You have to look, though, when you see a game like this that you know they're going to win. Is there a look-ahead situation? And next up is USF on the road. So not really a look-ahead situation. This feels like one of those games where Cincinnati takes care of business, maybe a first-half play here, because I've kind of figured out with some of these teams, they get out to the fast start, and then they pull their foot off the gas a little bit in the second half. So if you get in there when they're focused and serious, then you don't have to worry about it in the second half.
Matt, we got next game up. Moving to the Big Ten real quick. Illinois at Michigan State. Sparty laying 14 in the hook at home. 45 the total in East Lansing.
Well, I mean, in past years, this would be a blowout because, Michigan State and Illinois, I mean, Lovie Smith has done some good things. They've won 3 straight. Pretty ridiculous that Illinois has won 3 straight. I don't know when the last time that's happened. They've done it with some offense. The defense has gotten a little bit better, but, of course, it's against Rutgers and Purdue. Like, let's be honest, those 2 teams are not exactly offensive juggernauts. Neither is Michigan State. Darryl Stewart, who's a wide receiver, is not playing in this game, which means he's getting replaced by, I'm guessing his name is Laress Nelson, who's only got 2 catches so far this season. So a step down there. Plus, starting center Matt Allen's out after a leg injury 2 weeks ago. Michigan State's had this weird stretch. They had the game at Wisconsin. They had a bye. They hosted Penn State, and then they had another bye. And so I don't know if this disjointed nature is going to help them or hurt them, but Michigan State's offense is so bad lately, I don't think I can back them, especially at that number.
Let's head to your neck of the woods, Matt. We got Wake Forest. That's the 22nd ranked Wake Forest Demon Deacons at Virginia Tech. We got 62 the total, minus 2.5. That's Wake laying on the road.
Yeah, Wake Forest has been the best story in the ACC. I know Clemson's the best team in the ACC, but the best story is Wake Forest. And if you think about it, it's because of their offense. Jamie Newman has got so many weapons. Scotty Washington, a little banged up. That's something to watch. They still have the Surratt kid who's pretty good. They've got a solid stable of running backs. Wake Forest's defense can be exploited. This is also a weird scheduling spot. They come off the game against NC State. They play at Clemson. Now, I don't think a program like Wake Forest can look ahead to a game like that against Clemson. But if they aren't focused, Virginia Tech's playing some good football right now. Quincy Patterson, look, they probably should have won in Notre Dame. Bud Foster probably should have blitzed in that last drive, but he didn't. Quincy Patterson, another week, if he's the quarterback, will get more plays in the playbook. If Hendon Hooker's in there, the offense has been running pretty well for them. I'm going to see who's under center before I play this game first because it makes a bit of a difference. But there's a chance Virginia Tech's a live dog at home in this one, especially if Wake is not completely focused.
We got App State at South Carolina up next, Matt, and this is Sunbelt versus SEC. Always a tricky handicap for me. I usually stay away. However, App State's kind of looking appetizing here. They are catching 6 against the Gamecocks. 51 the total, Matt.
Yeah, South Carolina, last week I had the under in the South Carolina game when they played Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt's offense is atrocious, and South Carolina's defense isn't very good, but they don't score enough. Last week they basically got handed a bunch of good possessions, only scored 24 points against Vanderbilt. There's no look ahead here. Road trip to Texas A&M, there's no rivalry or fake trophy, I think, in that game. But App State's already won at North Carolina, which is a good win for them. South Carolina's going to be without their tight end, Nick Muse, who tore an ACL. Tavian Feaster is questionable at running back, but Rico Dowdell's supposed to be back. I wish I got more points here because I would totally be in App State here, but it's a short number. Vegas knows how good App State is. If it keeps falling, there might be value with the SEC team at home if this number keeps falling as it has in some places.
Pat, we got the battle of the unbeatens mid-major, Matt, up next. And we're talking Penn State at Minnesota. Looks like the Nittany Lions laying 7 on the highway, 47.5 the total, Matt.
Well, I think this game's going to tell us a lot about both teams because, to be honest, Penn State has the better wins, but do we really know how good they are? We know that KJ Hamler's a really good wide receiver. Sean Clifford's getting him the ball, which is really good, but I don't know enough about Penn State to say, they're definitely going to win this game. I certainly don't know enough about Minnesota. I go all the way back to week 1 when I had South Dakota State in a game that they needed overtime or they needed a late touchdown to beat South Dakota State. I just don't know how good this Minnesota team is. They've had a bye week here. They've had 2 weeks to hear from people that, hey, you're a false 8-0 team. You're not that good. I don't know. Big Ten's not my forte here. This won't be on my card. The only injuries I saw here, Noah Cain, the running back for Penn State's going to play. Looks like John Reed, the fifth-year cornerback, may play. Antonio Shelton is the defensive tackle. He is suspended for this one, and so their defensive line is going to take a bit of a hit there. I don't know enough about this game. This is not my forte, but I think that Minnesota may be worth a look as they've heard 2 weeks for how bad they are.
Matt, Minnesota's schedule is Maryland, Rutgers, Nebraska, Illinois, Purdue, Georgia Southern, and Fresno State. Out of those teams, would you say the 2 best teams or 2 of the 3 best teams are Georgia Southern and Fresno State?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think Fresno State might be the best one. I would have said Maryland, but Maryland's broken. They have not played very well. I don't believe Josh Jackson played in that one. But, yeah, it's probably Fresno State. I'm going to say South Dakota State because South Dakota State's really good. They're a top 5 FCS school.
Yeah.
Those are probably their 2 best. And obviously, look, at Iowa, at Northwestern, home Wisconsin before a potential Big Ten championship berth. I don't know enough about them. You got to give them credit. They're winning the games. There's a lot of teams. Look, Georgia lost to South Carolina at home. Minnesota hasn't done that yet this year. So we'll see. I'm not a believer yet, but I'm at 7 points at home. I might be willing to take a chance here, but I'm the wrong person to ask about the Big Ten.
All right, let's head down to the SEC. On the east side, we got Vanderbilt visiting the Swamp at Florida. Looks like the Gators minus 26.5. Revenge mode, looking to take it out on somebody. It might be the Commodores this week. 49.5 the total, Matt.
Now, look, when you talk about mid-major football and me, I'm 6-2 in the SEC this year. It makes complete sense, obviously. There's a lot of injuries to worry about here. With regards to Vanderbilt, it looks like it's going to be Deuce Wallace under center or Alan Walters. I had to look up who the heck Alan Walters was. No Riley Neal, no Mo Hassan for Vanderbilt. Their offense, 7 points against South Carolina, 6 points at Mississippi. They scored 6 points against Georgia back in week 1. I'm thinking that they're not going to contribute very much here if they score at all. You've got a Florida team that's obviously very angry and frustrated after the way they played against Georgia. The injuries here, Jabari Zuniga looks like he's going to play at defensive end for Florida. Jeremiah Moon and Amari Burney are probably going to be out here. You've got 2 defensive guys there. And also this week, they had an offensive lineman enter the transfer portal. He had started 8 of 9 games, but was losing snaps. So that's something to consider here. Once again, maybe a first quarter, maybe a first half play, and certainly I'd look at the under. The worry is Vanderbilt going to keep going 3 and out, and is Florida's offense just going to keep scoring? If you think Vandy can get enough stops, they're probably not going to score much, and so the under would come into play there.
Matt, we got Purdue at Northwestern up next. Looks like Northwestern laying 2 or 2.5 at home, 39 being the total.
Pretty sure Northwestern hasn't scored a touchdown since 2018. And the funny thing is, if you look at it, Coach Fitzgerald keeps coming out with with all these quips and everything, and he's talked about how frustrating it's been for his offense and it's how frustrating it's been for his team because his defense isn't that bad. I had the first half under against Indiana. A couple of bad turnovers by Northwestern prevented me from hitting that because they fumbled deep in their own territory, and Indiana took advantage of it. The injuries and stuff to look at here, Purdue, obviously, no Jack Plummer at quarterback, so now they're going to a former walk-on, Aiden O'Connell. They still don't have Rondell Moore. Jared Sparks at wide receiver may not play. There is also Cornell Williams, a starting linebacker who may not play. On the Northwestern side, they lose cornerback Greg Newsome, who's out for the season. We don't know how healthy Hunter Johnson is. We don't know who's going to be under center for Northwestern. A lot of questions to ask here. Very low total, probably because this could be like a 17-13 type game, although I don't know which one of the two it'll be.
Matt, we got Stanford at Colorado up next in the Pac-12. Cardinal laying 3 in Boulder, 55.5 the total.
Colorado is another fascinating case. I mean, they've lost to 5 in a row right now. They're just seemingly lost. It's because of a lot about injuries. Laviska Shenault's been in and out of the lineup. There are some cryptic quotes from the coach this week that kind of like we're concerned about him, the person, and we're not sure about his status, and he's going to do the best he can and things like that. Makes me think Laviska Shenault won't play. Tailback Alex Fontenot's day-to-day. He had a concussion. He did not play in the UCLA game. That's 2 big pieces right there. I know Montez is a good quarterback for Colorado, but he can't carry all this stuff himself. The guard, Colby Purcell, also out indefinitely. He had his gallbladder removed. He did return to practice and is listed as day-to-day, but who knows if he'll be available. Stanford had got KJ Costello back. Stanford looks like a decent team, but are you really ready to lay points with them on the road, even against a banged-up Colorado team in the altitude?
I'm not interested in the Stanford side. But next up, we can head back into your comfort zone, Matt. We got UTSA at Old Dominion. Looks like ODU, the Monarchs, laying 3 in the hook. Tells you a lot about UTSA. 43 being the total.
Yeah, so UTSA, their offense is atrocious, and they're also coming off a road game against an SEC team, and so that's a factor for me to consider because a lot of times these non-Power 5 schools, when they go on the road and play a Power 5 game, they come out of it extra banged up. They come out of it, a little bit tired or a little bit weary. Look at some of the teams after they play Alabama. The next week they don't necessarily have their best shot because of how rough and tumble that game is. The quarterback for UTSA, Narcisse, he injured his right thumb in that game against Texas A&M. They said he could have returned, but they didn't want to risk it. It really doesn't matter who's playing under center for UTSA. The offense is horrible, and the defense has struggled this year. They gave up 27 points to Rice at home a couple weeks ago. But the problem is ODU's offense is actually hideous. They've gone through 3 different quarterbacks this year as they try and find somebody. I talked to somebody around the program at ODU. There's a lot of discontent about Bobby Wilder lately. Maybe he goes, but then again, he also brought them from the doldrums of FCS. I'd love to take ODU at home. I mean, this is a UTSA team making the long trip from Texas. I'm going to hope that maybe the line comes down a little bit more. Maybe there's some UTSA money and I can get a decent price with ODU. There's some known quantities with the Monarchs. Their defense is very good. The only known quantity is their defense. So I probably will have ODU or nothing depending upon the line movement here.
He's Mid-Major Matt. Follow him on Twitter at Mid-Major Matt. And we have a special coupon code for the podcast, MMM29. That's MMM29. Gives you his 3-day all access for under $30, less than $10 a day, using the coupon code MMM29 at checkout, sportsmemo.com for Mid-Major Matt's 3-day all access package. We got USC at Arizona State, Matt, in the Pac-12. Looks like the Sun Devils laying 1 in the hook, 57 the total in Tempe.
So for USC, you have to wonder what their mindset is. They're coming off the loss to Oregon, 56-24. They no longer control their own destiny. They need Utah to lose again in order to represent that side of the conference in the conference championship. Keaton Slovis looked very human in that game as well. And so you have to wonder what this team is like. I'm not a big Clay Helton guy. I don't think he's a very good coach. Junior running back Stephen Carr did a little bit of running, but did not practice officially on Tuesday. He's about 90%, and he may return. That will help that backfield out. And then you look at Arizona State with Herm Edwards. I'll say it. I was not a fan of the Herm Edwards hire, but he's kind of surpassed everything I thought. I think it was a good time for a bye week for this team because they lost 2 straight. They didn't look good against Utah, and then UCLA giving up 42 to the Bruins. I think it was a good time to kind of clear your head, refocus a little bit. You get USC at home. 3 of their Final 4 are at home. I didn't see any massive injuries that would affect Arizona State here. I think the home dog might be worth a look here, hoping that USC's a little hungover after getting blasted by Oregon last week.
Matt, we got Wyoming at Boise State up next in the Mountain West. Broncos laying 13 at home, 48 the total on the blue turf.
So this is a tale of injuries as well here. Boise State, the coach came up. Coach Harsin basically came up and said, those guys that didn't play last week, yeah, they're all available, which means that Robert Mahone, who's going to be in the backfield, a safety, a left guard, all these guys missed against San Jose State, and now they're going to be available. Look, they got a scare last week against San Jose State, 52-42 at San Jose State. Like, that doesn't happen often because San Jose State traditionally has been a poor program. Boise State's offense is clicking right now. They've scored over 40 points several times. I mean, this is a team down the stretch that has Wyoming, New Mexico before 2 straight road games. And then you got Wyoming here. Sean Chambers is gone for Wyoming. Second leading rusher on the team. He's had a hand in almost 50% of the team's yards from scrimmage. Tyler Vanderwall, more of a pocket passer here, so they're going to have to change up the offense a little bit. He's only completed 47.3% of his passes, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. They could also play a true freshman, Levi Williams, to kind of mix things up a little bit. I've faded Wyoming as often as I possibly could early on in the season, especially with Sean Chambers in there. With him out there, there may not be value right now. Once again, this could be a Boise State first half. You punch a shell-shocked Wyoming team in the mouth if their offense struggles right away. But Boise State should win this game rather easily.
Great info, Matt. And next game up, these two teams pretty well. Liberty at BYU. Looks like minus 17 here. That's Brigham Young laying at home. 59 the total in Provo.
So last week I watched the BYU-Utah State game. I don't know what that game told me more about, was BYU or Utah State, but BYU was rather impressive. They win the game 42-14. They played Jaron Hall. He gets a concussion. Actually, no one really knew. He went into halftime. Nobody knew because they brought Bailey Romney out to Baylor Romney, whichever Romney. They have a bunch of Romneys on that team. They brought Romney out to take the kneel down. Everybody's like, well, what's going on with Jaron Hall? And then we find out he has a concussion. 2 concussions. 1 in each of his last 2 games. So I don't know if he's available. The caveat here is Zach Wilson was on the depth chart listed midweek. He's the starting quarterback. He's the guy that kind of was the guy when they started in. But Romney looked good last week. He made a couple of solid passes. He looked good in the pocket. He's dealing with a foot injury, so his mobility is not the best. But BYU here, remember, we've talked about how tough their schedule has been all year. They're coming off a humongous win against Utah State. They went for it's a wagon wheel that they played for, and they hadn't won it for a little bit. And so they get the wagon wheel. In comes Liberty, a team they've never played before, a fellow independent. I can see why this is a really big number here. Part of me leans to Liberty because maybe you're not going to get a focused BYU team after the big rivalry game last week. But then I go back to the Rutgers game a couple of weeks ago for Liberty. Liberty's beating up on teams that are kind of on their level, but once they start taking a step up in physicality, they kind of struggle a little bit. Look at the Syracuse game way back in week 1. They lose 24-0. Look at the Rutgers game. Granted, Rutgers is a terrible Big Ten team, but they have Big Ten size and Big Ten power here. So I can make a case for either side here. Liberty has the weapons. They're going to see a lot of zone and drop 8, which basically means Buckshot Calvert's going to have to find his way to Antonio Gandy Golden. It's an intriguing game to watch. It'll be on TV, but I don't know if I can play it because I've got leans and factors that help both teams out.
Next game up, Matt, we got Charlotte at UTEP in Conference USA action. The 49ers laying 13 in the hook on the highway, 58 the total in this USA matchup.
So I was really happy. I had Charlotte last week. I wasn't very happy at 10 o'clock after I locked it in that I didn't see that Benny LeMay was out. Of course, the coach said this week that he didn't find out Benny LeMay was was not playing until 9 a.m. that morning. So Benny LeMay is the big running back. We don't know what his status is for that game. Clearly, they proved they could win that game against Middle Tennessee. I'm not a huge Middle Tennessee guy. I thought it was a little inflated after their big win 2 weeks ago. But Charlotte's offense is really good. The Reynolds kid at quarterback, he can sling it. They've got some weapons at wide receiver. They've scored 34, 39 their last 2 games at home. UTEP, not so good. since that opening win against Houston Baptist, they've lost every game. Their offense is atrocious. They can't throw the ball. They can't run the ball. Brandon Jones had a serious concussion a couple of weeks ago, so the Loxley kid is in there. There's nothing to like about this UTEP team. But once again, can you lay that many points on the road with Charlotte? It's a situation they're not in very often. I'm probably not going to play this game, but it wouldn't kill me if UTEP showed something. Like, come on, their offense is just atrocious as a group. They can't complete passes, and that's half the game between passing and running the ball.
Yes, it is, Matt. We got Baylor at TCU up next. The Bears laying 2.5 on the road, 48 the total.
Baylor, another one of those teams that I want to see what we can do here with them, because Baylor, they're getting love because they're undefeated, but you look at their schedule, much like we discussed with Minnesota. Baylor's best win, I don't know. I mean, who do you think, Drew, is Baylor's best win so far this year?
Have they played Oklahoma State?
They won at Oklahoma State on knockout.
I would say that one.
I mean, yeah, that's a good win. They beat Iowa State at home. They won at Kansas State, which is good because obviously Oklahoma couldn't do that. I like Charlie Brewer. He's a really good quarterback. And I like Matt Rule. Being a guy who likes Temple football, I was very happy to see Matt Rule succeed at Baylor. They have a big injury, though. Clay Johnston, one of their main linebackers, has been out for a couple of weeks now. He suffered a knee injury against Texas Tech, so the defense has been a little bit shaky and might be an issue. But then again, who's going to be under center for TCU? This week, Alex Delton, the transfer quarterback, grad transfer, left the team. Max Dugan injured his middle finger last week. They think he'll be available. Michael Collins comes in on the very last offensive play of the game for TCU. He takes a shot to the ribs. He's not 100%, so I don't know who's going to be under center for TCU in this one. Generally, I don't like to play games when I don't know who both quarterbacks are going to be. The team has lost 3 of their last 4. They're not exactly great right now. I'll lay off and wait on this one until I find out who's under center because it kind of makes a difference for this one.
Well, why not Baylor off the bat? I mean, they beat Oklahoma State. They beat Iowa State, like you said. Now TCU with the quarterback issues. What's keeping you from laying it with Baylor under a field goal?
It definitely does make sense, but then once again, if they're 8-0 and they're undefeated, why are they only a 2.5 3-point favorite? There's of course the home field advantage, but TCU doesn't have a great home field advantage. Gary Patterson is a good coach, so there's not as much of an advantage there. I'm a little hesitant laying on the road there with Baylor. I know that they're going to have to go for style points. It's the one thing with this playoff stuff that people have to remember, especially Clemson and some of these teams that feel like they were disrespected by the playoff committee. Everybody's playing for style points right now. So I could see it. I lean to Baylor, but I'm not going to necessarily play it right now until I hear from who TCU's quarterback is going to be. All
right, Matt. Let's go to East Carolina at SMU in this AAC matchup. Mustangs laying 21 at home, 71.5 the total here, Matt.
This feels like another one of those take your frustrations out games because SMU on a national stage lost to Memphis. Now, look, they're still in the mix for a group of 5 berth. They still have, they're still only 1 loss. And if Memphis falls apart and if Boise State falls apart, so like SMU could be a little hungover, but they could also be really mad. Shane Buechele and those guys. The big question is Reggie Roberson Jr. going to play? He's their number 1 wide receiver. I like the Prochet kid, but they're so much better when both of them are on the field. East Carolina's offensive line's been without 3 guys. It looks like, once again, according to their depth chart, they're going to be without 3 offensive line guys again. They put a lot into that Cincinnati game last week, lost 46-43 at home. They lost 45-20 to USF. I believed in East Carolina that game. Clearly, it didn't work out very well. They've lost a couple games on the road this year. Didn't look very good. This feels like a first half play, first quarter play potentially as SMU gets some frustrations out and kind of reminds everybody why everybody loved them so much this season.
He's Mid-Major Matt, and you can get his 3-day all-access package at sportsmemo.com using the coupon code MMM29. It makes it only $29, less than $10 a day. Sportsmemo.com, coupon code MMM29 at checkout. 1 game left here, Matt, on this segment. We got total of 42 in the South Alabama-Texas State game. Bobcats laying 7.5 in San Marcos.
Oh, gosh, this total may not even be low enough. So let's run down the injuries here. Texas State, they're the home team. Gresh Jensen, as of today, when we tape this, he's still in the concussion protocol. So it looks like Tyler Vitt's going to be under center. He was horrific last game, had 2 interceptions in the second half. They lost 31-3 to Louisiana on the road. Also injured, wide receivers Jeremy Haydell, Micah Hiltz, Jamare Shareed for Texas State. Their starting running back, Caleb Twyford, is doubtful. I don't know how they're going to score any points with all those guys that are banged up right now. I know Jake Spavatel's an offensive guy, but clearly it hasn't really taken. They've scored 3, 14, 14 their last 3 games. Then you look on the South Alabama side. They are 125th in total offense, 123rd in passing offense so far this year. They are a team that doesn't know how to score. Cephas Johnson, who I've sworn up and down has talent to succeed, got yanked last game for Desmond Trotter at quarterback. So we don't know who's going to play quarterback for the Jaguars. A lot of question marks. This seems like an under, but the question is, can either defense play up to their potential here? You know, South Alabama's defense is okay. Texas State's defense is okay. And in theory, with both offenses struggling, you would think the under would be the play here, but neither defense is that spectacular. We don't see a ton of unders in the Sun Belt. This game probably won't be on my card. I might look at the under here because I don't know how Texas State's going to score. I'd love to take South Alabama here, but what have they shown me the last couple weeks? Their only win came against Jackson State back in week 2, 37-14. They haven't shown me anything to take advantage of this golden situation when you've got a really banged-up Texas State team on the field.
And, Matt, we did get a question, actually, on Twitter. Want to get the guy's right name, Handsome, on Twitter, at Handsome, with a S-U-M at the end. And I believe he's asking about the UCF game. So UCF versus Tulsa, was that correct on Twitter? Do you remember, Matt?
Yeah, the Friday night game in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So here's the thing. I have struggled, not necessarily struggled, I've misread UCF several times this year. I had the first half in their game against Houston because Houston's essentially tanking the season. UCF couldn't stop them, and then they figured it out in the second half. They won 44-29. Didn't cover the big number, though. If you look at UCF on the road, they won easily at Florida Atlantic. They lost a game at Pittsburgh in a game that where Pittsburgh basically punched them in the mouth. They got more physical than Florida. UCF wants to run up and down the field. They're like gazelles. The Gabriel kid at quarterback and then Gabriel Davis at wide receiver. They've got that stable of running backs. They basically want to finesse you to death. But they also lost that road game at Cincinnati, the more physical team. So I figured, okay, they're, and then they crushed Temple. I mean, that was a terrible game where they won 63-21. I can't figure out Tulsa, though. They've lost 5 straight. They were close. They should have beaten SMU. Remember, they lost that game in overtime. They were up big in the fourth quarter on SMU and then blew the lead. They were clearly hungover, couldn't beat Navy the next week. Then they lose a close game to Cincinnati on the road. Then they lose by 1 to Memphis, and then they lose by 12 at Tulane. There's 2 ways to look at it. Tulsa's either really close to breaking through, and this is their big opportunity on a Friday night against UCF, or these close losses are taking a toll on them. What's the number that you see right now for that game?
I believe it was 10. I'll pull it up, though. I'm pretty sure it's 10.
I wish it was more because I would have taken a chance with Tulsa here. But then again, do we know what their mindset is? Do we know if these losses have taken a toll?
Matt,
they've got to really.
I was way off, man. It's 17. This was a game I wasn't really interested in just because a lot of what you're talking about with Tulsa, I think Tulsa's underrated. I really do. They've had a couple close losses, but it's the same thing, and plus the fact you bring up the Gabriel kid, just a freshman, Dylan Gabriel here. And he hasn't looked good on the road. That's why I don't want to lay a big number here with UCF. But at the same time, I don't want to step in front of the UCF train just because they've been a moneymaker for so long right now. So I don't really have much on it, man. But it is 17 or 17.5, depending where you're shopping.
And then the total's probably in the 70s, I would think, for something like that.
It is 70 flat, yeah.
Yeah, if you're looking to play this game, which I would say, once again, the one thing that I like to say on this thing is you don't have to play every game. If you're looking for something to play here, I'd probably consider the over. If you consider Houston scored 29 on them last week, Temple scored 21, East Carolina scored 28. I mean, I think Tulsa could put up some points here. And then, of course, as you said, it's UCF is just steamrolling everybody offensively. It's probably an over or nothing. If you're looking to the side, maybe Tulsa, but once again, if they get into a close game and then they start making some bad plays late and UCF pulls away, then that 17 is still not enough.
Matt, good stuff, man, on the podcast. Every game on the board and plus an extra one. So we hit the UCF Tulsa game twice. Anything you want to throw out before we shut this down, man?
The other thing that people need to consider here is that we get down to the end of the regular season. About 4 weeks left for a lot of these teams. remember, there are teams out there who are hiding their freshmen. Not necessarily hiding, but remember, with this new rule now, you can have your freshmen play several games and still redshirt them for the next year. So you really have to pay attention and be diligent with regards to some of the teams. For example, Rutgers, if they decide to play this Cole Snyder kid at quarterback, they've specifically saved up just the right amount of games for him to play. He might make a little bit of difference for Rutgers. So if you start watching these games and see kids you've never heard of, or if there's freshmen who have made an impact in the first couple games and they're not playing right now, that's the reason why teams are starting to play for next year when it comes to some of these freshmen on their squads.
He's Mid-Major Matt. Check him out on sportsmemo.com. His 3-day all-access MMM29 is the coupon code for under $10 a day. MMM29, 3-day all-access, sportsmemo.com. Best of luck with your bets, guys.